Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live, brought to you by NordVPN, the VPN that will let you connect to 10 different machines from one account. It's a packed room we've got tonight. Tonight I'm joined by Record Sports' Scott McDermott. Scott, how's it going?
I'm good, Daniel. You okay?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm delighted as well because we're joined by the one and only Tam McManus. Tam, how was Pebble Beach? Was it good?
Brilliant. Just preparing for the Masters, lads.
But the man I need to start with
You're stealing your pal, Scott.
I know, sorry. I'll say that live. I stole that right off Scott. Sorry, Scott. But I should start with Record Sports' Andy Newport. Andy, how's it going? I understand you've got some breaking Rangers news for us.
Yes, I'm just making sure that we're past 6 o'clock, so no breaking any embargoes yet. Rangers have just put out an open letter to the fans from the chairman, Andrew Kavanagh, just spelling out some updates and some things going forward. I suppose that the top line of it is that the club's American owners, the investors, are going to be putting in another £16 million lump sum through a share issue that will obviously take in Andrew Kavanagh, the San Francisco 49ers, some of the other clubs' major investors, and it'll be basically used going forward to fund next season's transfer spend. I think there's a realisation that they have to streamline and cut back in some areas to make sure that they're spending their money wisely. There's an announcement that obviously they're not going to be basically replacing Kevin Thirlwell, sporting director. I think they've decided that they've got this sort of set up at the minute where Dan Purdy, Stiggin Bjornaby is involved in that as well, helping Danny Rowe, basically draw up the list of targets, and I think they're just going to go along with that set up for the meantime. There is the fans are going to be asked to play their part too. There's going to be a 6.5% increase in season ticket prices for the new season in terms of adult tickets. Certainly, I think the juvenile ones are staying the same price, but they're aware that things are tight, money's tight. But if they want Rangers to compete and be winning titles next season, then they have to find the money and they have to make sure that it's spent in the best possible way, which is obviously they believe in the men's first team.
Scott, when the guys came in, the new owners last year, a lot of people were a bit sceptical, but one thing you can't accuse Andrew Kavanagh or any of them of is not putting money into Rangers.
100%. I mean, that looks like that's 16 million getting in. That's roughly, you're talking 36 million in the space of two seasons. The majority of which obviously going in the playing squad. So in terms of commitment, I don't think you can fault it. And it's interesting that it's obviously come out today, because I think getting towards the end of the season, it was always going to be interesting to see how next summer looked for Rangers. When you think they could still obviously finish second or third in this title race. Then you're talking about European qualifiers, no guarantee a group stage. There's already been a lot of money ploughed in. In my mind, it was always going to be interesting. What did Americans do here? But with this announcement today, it's clear. They're not going to stop until they get to become the number one team in Scotland again. And I think for Rangers fans, it'll be music to the ears. Obviously, they want to go and try and win this title, which would be a massive help to them financially. Potentially, obviously, getting straight into the Champions League if other things go for them. But I just think, in a general sense, I'm sure Andy will agree. You think of the turmoil that Rangers have been through in the last 20 years financially. Just having that kind of, just being content in the knowledge that they've got owners now that are financially secure, committed to the club, to kind of put their money where their mouth is. And for even the last few years before the Americans came in, there was always worry, I think, amongst Rangers fans. Who's putting the money in? It was loans. Do we need to pay them back? There was constant kind of cost cutting. You think about the summer Philippe Clement had to cut his budget and sell big players. Obviously, that's changed with the new owners coming in. And I just think, before the end of the season, as I say, obviously they want to win this title, but I think for Rangers fans, it'll be a big boost to them to know that there's more money getting ploughed in the summer.
I mean, just to go on to ask what you're talking about, £36 million. That's what they've invested through the share issue that they did previously. I think it was £20 million last summer, then another 16 now. But you're talking about it cost them upwards of about £80 million to actually buy the club in the first place. So I mean, like, they're putting their money where their mouth is, frankly. So I think you're entirely right. The supporter base have had so many fraught years in terms of worrying about frankly, they're going to be able to keep the lights on going forward. So this will be really encouraging. I think what has to be taken into consideration is, like, I think that the new owners are learning, and it's taken them time to get to grips with Rangers, but I think they're learning fast, and they're not scared of making change when change is needed. Obviously they left a terrible start, frankly, at the start of the season with Russell Martin, with Kevin Thelwell, but they identified quickly it wasn't happening, it wasn't working, and they made the changes. And listen, it's not been a perfect run since then under Danny Rowe, but they are right back in the mix for a title that, frankly, a lot of people thought was well beyond them at the start of the season. So there's still work to be done this year, but I think the fans will be excited by the fact that already there's an eye being turned to next season.
I think Daniel, I think there's probably learning recruitment-wise as well as they go along. Obviously, Kevin Thelwell's gone. As Andy says, Dan Purdy's still there, doing a decent job just now. Stig Inga Bjornaby's in there as an advisor. But I think even when you look at the January additions, look, the summer was difficult. There were so many new players coming in. But I just think when you look at the January additions, particularly at the moment, Romans and Chukwani, for instance, for the money they've paid for them, kind of between 3 and 4 million for both players. Good age, good profile. They've settled in really quickly, seem to have adapted to Scottish football really quickly. So I do think, just in general, these American owners, they're learning as they go on. And as Andy says, that has to be encouraging for the fan base.
And just to talk about the commitment from the new owners, and also I know there was a bit of speculation when a couple of weeks back when Parag Marathi came off the board, and people were, I think people were leaping to the conclusion going, is this some sort of fracture between them and the 49ers? It was nothing of the sort. Obviously, just with UEFA to remain UEFA compliant in terms of the multi-club ownerships, he had to come off. But I mean, even just going back to the Old Firm game a couple of weeks back when we saw those scenes at the end, the scenes of disorder, people are thinking, well, what are the Americans, thinking, looking at this? But I had the chance to speak to some people at the club today and reassured that the club, the owners, whilst obviously they weren't impressed at all by what they saw, and they're fully compliant with the investigation, independent review that's taking place right now. That's not the sort of thing that's going to shake their commitment to the club. They will want to see people who are responsible punished. They will want to see people that either were carrying out violence in the pitch, or who were instigating vandalism and in the Brimlin end, and insulting the victims of the Ibrox disaster. They want to see them punished. They want to see people punished on an individual basis, I think, would be the way, without any sort of sweeping bans against ultras groups or anything like that. But they remain committed to this project, and so I think that is something, again, that will reassure the fans that who might have thought, goodness, are they going to be sort of scared away by what we saw unfold at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago.
We've got some comments coming in. If you're watching at home, let us know your take. But Tam, do you like the cut of Kavanagh's jib?
Yeah, I think when you look at, obviously, Rangers in the past, they were always scrimping and saving to try and catch Celtic. I think you've now got owners in who have got very deep pockets. They are obviously fully committed to Rangers now, as the guys have said. Obviously purchasing the club and then 20 million in the summer, and another, chunk of money in the January window, and then they're committed next season. So I don't think they're going to rest until Rangers are back in top in Scottish football, and their supporters will be delighted with that. It seems to be the opposite at the other side of the Glasgow, where you've got a club who have got plenty of money, who won't spend it, and the supporters are up in arms about it. So it's kind of flipped, and yeah, I think the Rangers supporters will be delighted at that statement that they're going to keep putting money into the club. They've made mistakes, I think, but they've recognised those mistakes early, and obviously terminated Russell Martin and Kevin Thelwell, brought a new manager in. They didn't rest on trying to recover it and trying for the guys to recover it, the situation, they just bind them and then get the next guy in. So they're ruthless and they want to see Rangers back at the top. So no, I think if you're a Rangers supporter, you're delighted with that news.
Andy, I know I need to let you go and get back to some duties for the website. Your story, it's online on Record Sport Online just now. If anyone wants to read it, it's there. But thanks for joining us as ever.
Cheers, boys. Catch you later.
Cheers, Andy.
Andy.
And as I say, Andy's story there about the open letter and all things Rangers is on Record Sport Online now. We've got some comments coming in. Let me throw a few of these at you guys before we move on. You'll load them up. It says, great to hear. Defo to invest in the squad, so future's looking good. Let's hope we get more for European football. Graham Brown says at least their board are willing to invest in the team. I'm not an expert, and that might be a slight veiled jab at Celtic, but who knows. Tam says they backed him in the last transfer window, but they also backed Russell Martin. Ibrox said January was a good window. Skov is the only concern, and he's an option to buy. I want to talk a little bit, guys, away from Rangers, though. We'll come back to Rangers because, Scott, you wrote a really, I thought, interesting piece on Nasser Djiga for Record Sport Online today. But Tam, I wanted to concentrate on the story that we had on Record Sport Online today, that Sky Sports are going to prioritise the final day of the Premiership season, the title race on May the 16th. There'll be no English Premier League games. It'll be all Scottish Premiership, all Rangers, Celtic and Hearts, all kicking off at the same time. And I said this before we come on here, as a Hibs man, how are you feeling about everything?
I've heard various comments about Hibs fans would be delighted to see Hearts win the league. That is just utter nonsense. I've not spoke to any Hibs supporter or read any Hibs supporter online that wants Hearts to win the league. We just don't want them to win the league. I'm sorry. If it was Motherwell, Aberdeen, anyone else bar Hearts, I think everyone would be delighted from a Hibs persuasion that somebody else is sticking up to the big two. And listen, there'll be fans of other clubs, Dundee Uniteds, Dundees, Motherwells, who'll be delighted if Hearts win the league. But that's just a massive rivalry through in Edinburgh with Hibs and Hearts, and you don't want to see them win the league because you'll never hear the end of it. From a Hearts point of view, rightly so, if they go and win the league this season. So, but I think it's been great for Scottish football. For putting that aside, I think it's been brilliant that Hearts have really put it up to the big two this season. They've been top of the league for much of the season. I think, being honest, right now they deserve to win the league. That's not to say that they're going to win the league, but you look at the problems with Rangers at the start, with Celtic basically throughout the whole season, and Hearts have been the stable club. They're all on the same page. The supporters are behind the team, the manager, the board. Tony Bloom's come in with a breath of fresh air. So that's been fantastic from Hearts this season. So, and I'm glad to see Sky Sports finally giving Scottish football some respect, because they've not given us respect for years. They've been a byproduct of the English football. They stick us on when there's no English games on. So I think it's fantastic, and hopefully, listen, I think it will go down to the last day of the season. I think all three clubs will be in there fighting the last day of the season. So what a day that would be if all kick off at the same time and all have a chance to win the league. But I think every supporter now is just waiting for those fixtures to come out to see who's playing who, and are they going to leave potentially a derby game towards the end of the season, which I don't think they will.
What's going to happen if it's Hibs v Rangers, Tam? And a Hibs victory could win Hearts the league. How's that going to get done?
Yeah, Scott, I spoke about this last week with Peter, and there's no doubt in my mind that those fixtures are going to be crucial, because there's no way that Hibs are going to turn over Celtic or Rangers in the last day of the season for Hearts to win the league. And I'm not saying that anybody's going to lie down to anybody, but every Hibs supporter in that stadium will be wanting their team to get beat. It's just, I'm sorry for Hearts so they don't win the league. You've seen it. I think you've seen it a few years ago. It wasn't quite as bad, where I think Rangers, was it Helicopter Sunday, where Rangers had to win. Hibs could do a 1-0 defeat. And obviously the Rangers went 1-0 up, and they just played kickball for the last 20 minutes. That just left Hibs that season. And I remember watching that going, this is incredible. Last 10 minutes of the game, they just kept the ball. Nobody wanted to score. They were happy with the result. And you could see something similar to that again if Hearts are in the mix to win the league and Hibs are getting beat. They won't want to score a goal, equalise and gift Hearts the league. So it's those last day fixtures are going to be crucial. They've got to get those right in terms of the the SPFL computer.
That's why it's going to be so hard for the SPFL to put them.
Yeah, it's a nightmare for them.
See, with 3 teams going for it, I mean, they want to avoid derbies in like the last day of the season. So I think they want to get the derbies done in the first or second game after the split. But as I say, that then leaves the potential for what I'm describing. You know, Hibs v Rangers v Hibs in the last day or whatever. And as I say, it could hand the title to another team. It's going to be so interesting how they sort these fixtures out for the last 5 games.
In the comments, Skeleton Man says, here's a stat nobody's talking about. Hearts have only lost 1 game, and it was Hibs away when Shanklin has played, but now he's back. McKenna, who's a big Jambo, says all 6 teams should try their hardest to win the remaining games at the post-split, no gimmies. I'm sure he would say that. And Tino in the comments said a little bit a minute ago about the masterful mischief from Ryan Stevenson. It was him, Tam, that said on this very show a couple of weeks ago that after the ugly scenes at Ibrox, even Hibs fans want Hearts to win the league. And I said, I don't think Tam McManus would share that view. But what's your gut feeling? Do you think Hearts are going to do it, Tam?
Oh, I do now. Honestly, I've tried everything this season, guys. I've tried to Jonah them. I've tried to bogey them. I've said they can't win it. Then I'm saying they're a certainty to win it. They can only blow it. I've tried everything, and they're still top of the league. Next, it's a voodoo doll. I don't know what I'm left with to try and stop Hearts to win the league, but
you think they will do it?
I think they're going to win it now. I do. I think they're going to win it now. I've said Celtic. When Wilfred Donsey left and Martin O'Neill came in, I thought Celtic were going to win it just because the Martin O'Neill factor. They didn't strengthen at all in January. They've had a shocker of a window in January, Celtic. Oh. There's not really anybody that's come in and strengthened the team. And obviously the result at the weekend there, at Celtic are now got to win every game. They've got to win 7 games for me. I don't think that squad's capable of winning 7 games, I'll be honest. So I think if Hearts keep their nerve, I think they've got Livingston away, surely a gimme. I think they're relegated. Motherwell at home, they've hit a brick wall. And then the fixture's going into the split. So I think if you're a Hearts supporter now, you're getting very, very excited.
Craig Marshall in the comments says Motherwell will take points off Hearts. And this one, McKenna again has been in touch. He seems to think, Tam, that if and when Hearts win the league, you'll be in a full Hearts kit.
Yeah, I did say that. Unfortunately, I did say that about 6 weeks into the season when Hearts were top. I said that there's no hope in hell that Hearts are going to win the league. And if they do, I'll wear a full Hearts strip on another show. So that has been clipped, and I'm not getting away for that. So if Hearts win the league, the first day of next season, I'm going to have to do that show with a full Hearts strip with shin pads and boots on. And I'm already on the Hearts Superstore looking at prices, 60 quid for a home strip, man. Surely I can get some sort of discount after that season or something. He must have a code that I can get because I'm going to be over 100 quid an off for this trip. Oh, it's a disaster, man. I need something to happen, somebody to stop them.
The only thing to top that is when Hearts are unveiling the flag the first day of next season, you come out at Tynecastle with the full gear on.
You'd be the mascot actually in the first day of next season.
It's been haunting me. I just think about it all the time. And then when Hearts lost to Kilmarnock, I thought, right, I'm going to get away with this here. I'm going to get away with this. and then I'm probably no now. So I don't know what to do. It's a nightmare.
The thing is, Daniel, we're obviously joking about it, right? Actually, I totally understand where Tam's coming from. See, for Hibs fans, I remember being I was at one of the press conferences earlier in the season before the Edinburgh Derby. I remember actually saying to David Gray, and I almost kind of felt for him because he was doing a decent job at Hibs. At that time, Hibs were on a kind of decent run, but Hearts were sitting top of the league, and I just think that is an absolute nightmare for a Hibs fan. I mean, no, Hearts have not won it in 60. There'll be Hibs fans thinking, the Hibs fans would never have even gave it a thought that in their lifetime Hearts would win a league. Everybody just pretty much accepts the old firm's going to keep winning it. For guys, for Hibs fans to suddenly have to deal with this, the potential of Hearts winning the league, potentially qualifying for Champions League, Tony Bloom's not going anywhere, more good players coming in, being reminded of this title win till the day they die. I mean, it's just horrendous for Hibs fans. You've got to feel for them. So I get where Tam's coming from. They must be absolutely praying that something goes wrong here with Hearts and they start dropping points or their nerve goes in the running.
Listen, Tam, I know we need to let you go, and I know I was laughing as well, but believe me, I totally get it. I wouldn't. I'm laughing because it's so absurd, and I just wouldn't want to be in my shoes. But look, who knows? There's plenty more twists and turns to come.
There is, and as I said, it's in Hearts' hands now. I think that they have had various opportunities to bottle it, and they haven't so far. So if they keep their nerve, I think they're going to win the league, and I'm going to be moving to Mars shortly. Hopefully Elon Musk has got that rocket ready for the next couple of years, saving up now.
If anyone watching's got a discount code for the Hearts Superstore, get in touch because Tam could use it. That'd be good. Tam, it's always an absolute pleasure having you on. Much appreciated, mate.
Right, cheers, lads.
Cheers, Tam. All the best. See, I'm laughing as well there, Scott. But that is literally like a nightmare.
Oh,
you're getting cold sweats if you're a Hibs fan. 150th anniversary as well.
And look, that's far. It goes for any kind of fierce rivalry, but especially one like that. That City rivalry, as I say, it's bad enough. When Hearts win a Scottish Cup, or when Hibs won a Scottish Cup back in 2016, for the opposite side, it's a nightmare. Obviously, we kind of deal with the Rangers and Celtic element of it most of the time, but the rivalry's just as fierce through there. And honestly, I just think for Hibs fans, as I said there, they would never contemplate Hearts winning a league. No, especially by the way when you think Hearts only last season were struggling in the league. Was it 2 seasons ago, bottom 6 or whatever?
Last season, wasn't it?
I mean, from there to suddenly go to actually winning the league, or even just now having to deal with the fact that they're top of the league, getting into end of March, April. For Hibs fans, it must be unthinkable. And I suppose, obviously, they've still to play each other. I mean, the motivation for Hibs players and supporters not to win that game will be huge. So I suppose Tam's talking about Hearts holding their nerve, and obviously they've still to play the Old Firm, but that Hibs game will be absolutely huge, because you've got to imagine, as I say, motivation levels for Hibs players will be through the roof to try and put a serious dent in the Hearts title bid.
Yeah, absolutely. Tam in the comments says Scottish football's getting talked about, and we have Hearts to thank because they're challenging for this title. Hope they can keep the same pace next season. And this one here from Tiro, he says the vindication for McManus will be something that no one can ever take away from him. Everyone can shut up. It's taken me a while to get to this, Scott, because we had Andy's story, and then I knew Tam had to get away sharp. But Keith Jackson's obviously on holiday this week. It's the fourth holiday of 2026, which is good. I mean, good for him. Good to have that annual leave. But he's actually sent me some of his holiday pictures, Scott.
All right.
He's looking really good, I think. I mean, I was a bit... The kilt on the beach is a bold look, but I mean, I think he pulls it off. That's
actually... That's better than his normal attire.
You're right, it is. The sunglasses I thought were a bit much, but I think he's, again, pulling it off. The pineapple.
I need to bring that in for Hotline Live one night, definitely.
Aye, absolutely. And that one, the flamingos, I said to him, flamingos suit you, and he said, I think they do. And then, obviously, the obligatory log flume. And I don't know about doing your suntan on the log flume. That's a weird one, but there you go. That's Keith.
I'm not having any pink shorts either. That's
true. That's true. Those ones are a bit questionable, but the rest looking good. So, it'll be good to have Keith back next week on the show. Hopefully he's watching. I mentioned at the top of the show, Scott, Nasser Djiga, you wrote what I thought was a really interesting piece for Record Sport Online. It's on the website now, about Nasser Djiga, his importance to Rangers, and I guess the kind of growing calls for him to be signed permanently. And if you'd said this to me a few months ago, without being harsh to the guy, I thought he was an absolute bomb scare, and I would have actually thought there'd be people at Rangers saying, "Look, can we maybe give him back in January?" He's never key player.
You're right. His start to the season wasn't great, Daniel. When you think back, I think he gets sent off against Dundee during Russell Martin's time. I think he gets subbed at half time. Game against Hearts at Ibrox when they lost. He was obviously part of the disaster in Bruges for Rangers, losing 6 goals in the Champions League qualifier. And even when Danny Rowe came in, the League Cup semi-final against Celtic at Hampden, I thought he had a poor day as well. He just looked a bag of nerves that day, and he came out the team, I think, after that. And you thought at that point, no, this guy, he's not going to cut it. No, he'll probably. There was even talk, I think, in January of maybe try to send him back to Wolves, obviously his parent club. But whatever's happened, I mean, he went to AFCON in Burkina Faso. I don't think he kicked a ball at AFCON, but he came back and he's got his chance again at Rangers. I think John Souttar's performances have been kind of below par, and it's got Djiga another opportunity. And I just think in the last few weeks, him and Fernandes have looked a really formidable partnership at the back. Rangers look a lot more solid. The two of them seem to kind of dovetail quite well with each other. The two of them are absolute physical monsters. Centre-backs. Djiga is rapid. There was an instant in the Aberdeen game just last weekend. I don't know if you see it, in Aberdeen had a kind of breakaway, and his pace to get back and kind of cut out the danger was really eye-catching. So he's in a really good runner for him. I spoke to one of his old coaches. It was his manager at Basel, Alexander Frey, kind of Swiss legendary goal scorer. And he had him for a year. He was only 19, 20 at the time. And it was interesting because he actually said at that time at Basel, he could see the kind of raw potential in him. He put him into the team, but he actually made a couple of mistakes and had to take him out. But he learned from them, and he eventually kind of worked his way back in. And it kind of feels like the same's happened at Rangers. I think he's adapted. I said on here a couple of weeks ago, post St Mirren game in Paisley when they won 1-0, early on, a ball get played in the side of him, horrible conditions at St Mirren. And I'm convinced earlier in the season he would have tried to turn and play a ball inside or try and keep possession. Instead, he just knocked it out of the park. And to me, that told me that he's learning. No, he's learning on the job. He's learning about Scottish football. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the summer. I mean, he's due to go back to Wolves, obviously. He's a £10 million player. They bought from Red Star. But Wolves are probably going to go down to the Championship. So there's an argument to say, well, if they go down to the Championship, they want to call him back. He's an asset for them that they want to play him. But there's also the flip side of that is Rob Edwards. I think he'll have his own idea about what centre backs he wants in the Championship. And if he's no worked with Djiga and he's not really seen him at close quarters, if Rangers were to be in for him and try to get him in a permanent, it might appeal to Wolves and Rob Edwards just to cut their losses on him and get some money in and let him go to Rangers. So it's going to be interesting, but I agree with you that I've heard a lot of fans now saying they would try and keep him next season, try to get him back up because of that partnership with Fernandes, which you would never have predicted a few months ago, but that's how well he's been playing recently.
Fernandes is the one as well that I think is going to make serious money for Rangers when he does leave. But just on Djiga, what is your gut feeling? I know it's really hard to tell at this time of the year, but as you say, as a £10 million centre half, do you think there is any way Rangers could pull off? I mean, I'm sure they do have the money to do it. We've talked at the top of the show about money getting invested, but do you think that's likely if they had to pay £6-7 million? Or would it even be that? Who knows?
That might be a wee bit steep for Rangers. But what I do think is, if you ask Danny Rowe right now, would you take Nasser Djiga back next season? I think he would say yes.
Aye, I agree.
I think looking at him with Fernandes, Rowe must have been impressed. I mean, listen, Danny Rowe might have his own ideas about bringing another centre back in on a permanent next year. Maybe he'll be maybe he's accepted the fact that Djiga will need to go back and he'll need to get a centre back in. Obviously, they've signed John Souttar on a new contract and Fernandes is on a long-term deal. I think if he says to Danny Rowe just now, look, similar to the Mikey Moore situation, would you take Djiga back next season? I think he would say yes. I mean, a second loan, you would think probably unlikely. But could Rangers go into Wolves and say, listen, we'll give you in the region of $4 million for him, $4.5 million or whatever? I think given his performances recently, that might be not a bad deal for Rangers. And as I say, it depends what happens with Wolves and what they're thinking. But they might want to cut their losses on him. And just, I mean, he's hardly played a game for Wolves. As I say, they're going to go down, suffer huge kind of financial losses going to the Premier League to the Championship, as you'd expect. So it might appeal to them just to get him off the books. And listen, you don't know what Djiga's thinking. He's already had 6 clubs in his career already. He's only 23. And that was the point Alex Fry was making. No, it is time for him to really settle down and find a home where he's playing every week. And we've not spoken to Djiga. We don't know what he's thinking, but you'd imagine, he's been pretty settled at Rangers. He must be happy with how he's playing. Must be happy with that partnership with Fernandes. So you would think from the outside that it's something he'd maybe be keen on. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the summer.
You're low him up. It says the money for Djiga will be no loss if we win the league due to auto qualification for the Champions League. You'd imagine that if you play as well. Green Machine says Spurs will need more. What's your gut feeling on that, Scott? I don't want to go too in depth, but do you think Mikey Moore will be back in the Rangers shirt next season?
Tough. I'll try and keep it short. I think Rangers will definitely want him, but I think they might need to wait. I think it's going to be a saga, Daniel, in the summer. I think it's going to go on for ages. Spurs will probably want to hang on to him for as long as possible in terms of pre-season and stuff, but it might get to the point in the window where a new Spurs manager thinks, nah, I've got enough here. I can let him go out again. So I think Rangers will do everything in their power to try and get him, but it might be a difficult deal to do.
Aye. Across the city, it's the 22nd anniversary, Scott, of one of the most memorable results in Celtic's history, as if to rub in the fact that they've got so much or such limited striking options this season. It's the anniversary of Celtic going to Barcelona, holding out in the Nou Camp for a 0-0 draw and eliminating Barcelona 1-0 on aggregate. Would you say, Scott, the current striking options that Celtic have are better than Larsson and Sutton, or on a par? How would you frame it?
Oh, it's close, very close.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
Junior Adami or Henrik Larsson or
it's a tough one.
Chara or Sutton. I think Big Sutty would fancy his chances that 1-on-1 with Fanchara or Adami. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I wanted to get your take on Celtic, those Scots. I was listening to the Record Rangers podcast the other day, and you were saying that you were really surprised by Celtic losing at Dundee United, and I do agree from the point of view that you can't throw at the Celtic team a lack of desire. They've always come back for whatever lack of talent they've got. They never give up. You see that Ibrox and stuff. Whereas in Sunday, it kind of looked like a few of the players had chucked it, to be honest. To me, at least.
Honestly, Daniel, I was shocked with that performance. And I know Celtic fans will say, have you seen them this season? And I've not seen them a lot of live games. Obviously, it's mostly the Rangers games that I cover. But even when I seen the starting 11 for Celtic, I thought, that's a fairly strong starting 11 of the players that they had available. Obviously, I thought even Ian Atchell coming back would be a boost for them, because I still think on his game he's probably still the best number 9 they've got at the minute. Nygren he can always rely on for goals. Callum McGregor back in the team. I just looked at it and thought I really fancied Celtic. I know the pitch was so poor at Tannadice. I get that, and it's difficult to play quality football on it. But you touched on it there. The most striking thing was just the lack of hunger and appetite. And listen, that's something I've thrown at Rangers teams over the last few years in terms of their inability to go over the line and win titles. I've been shocked at the word I always use with Rangers when they were struggling to get into title races was urgency. Mm-hmm. And Celtic were absolutely devoid of urgency. It was as if the players didn't realise the kind of magnitude of the game or what was at stake or what stage they were at in the season. And honestly, but even when I think about a couple of weeks ago, Celtic played poorly at Ibrox for 45 minutes in the league game, and then pretty much for 90 minutes in the cup game or 120 minutes before it went to penalties. But in both of those games, they had a bit of grit and determination and desire and resilience. about them that kind of got them a point in the league game and then gets them over the line in the cup. I was really surprised at the fact there was none of that at Tannadice. I mean, forget quality. As I say, quality was going to be difficult on that surface anyway, even though Dundee United actually produced the moments, the rare moments of quality in the game. But I was really surprised by that result. Just given what was at stake, given the fact Hearts and Rangers had already won, you're expecting any Celtic team to come flying out the traps. But it was a nothing performance for them. And how many times have you been able to say that about a Celtic team in the midst of a title race? No, very often. Certainly in the last kind of 5 to 10 years, you could never accuse Celtic of that. And that's why I think that'll be a worry for Martin O'Neill, that performance, the fact that they're capable of that. And Tam touched on it earlier, they probably need to win the 7 games now to go and win the title. I think their next game away to Dens Park is going to be really difficult. I mean, if they turn up and produce anything like they produced at Tannadice, they won't win at Dens Park. They've already struggled there this season. I think Stephen Presley's got Dundee together again, and they've got a wee bit about them. They've got attacking threats that can hurt you. Dundee even played well at Tynecastle last week, even though they lost 1-0. So I think that's a really difficult away game for Celtic. And Callum McGregor, Martin O'Neill, they've all said that any sort of slip up in that game, you would need to think knocks them out of it altogether. And then we're talking about a 2-horse race all of a sudden.
One last visit to the comments, Scott, before I wrap up. Tone says Celtic goals have mostly always been from midfield, so it's not a surprise about the non-strikers. Gavaldo says it was Celtic's second half performance that looked like they gave up or looked shattered. Tiro says Martin O'Neill's very much a first 11 manager. He hasn't got a first 11 this time. Tone again says the money they've spent, they should be walking the league. Green Machine says that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen Celtic play, and I've been around since the days of Moses. Sing the Blues says no matter who Celtic select, they don't suit Martin O'Neill's style. James says Celtic have lost 9 games this season, yet they're still in there, which shows how nuts this season is. I think it's 8 in the league, but that brings me.
That is great. I mean, 8 defeats this season should put you out of the title race, but that's just the kind of campaign that we've had. And as a guy mentioned the second half performance there, he's right. I mean, when Dundee United score first to go ahead, even when they get the second, you normally always expect a response for Celtic towards the end. Normally they're batting teams' door down to try and get a goal, even if it's not to get a point out the game. Just never materialised. I don't remember the Dundee United keeper making a meaningful save in the second half. So it's a big worry for them. No, you're right. The strikers, the striking area is a problem. It's interesting. I've just today on social media, I see a lot of Celtic fans talking about, maybe going to maybe changing the formation, going to 3-5-2. Martin O'Neill's kind of favourite system back in the day in his first spell in charge. And I don't disagree with that. I think he probably has to try something a bit different. The players they've got the now, they probably suit a 3-5-2 when you think about like Scales and Tierney in the left, Alistair Johnson if he gets back on the right. The wingers aren't quite doing it. They've got good central midfielders. It might allow Nygren a bit more license to get forward without the kind of responsibility of getting back. So he can kind of prioritise getting in the box for goals. And obviously going with 2 strikers might just give you that bit more threat, whether that's Maeda and Chvanchara or Adamu, or you play Nygren up there, whatever it might be. But the point is, with 7 games to go, are they going to kind of rip it up and try something different? They might. And as I say, Martin O'Neill was used to that system. Whether Sean Maloney's keen on it, who knows? But it'll be interesting to see. How they react at Dens Park in that next game. I mean, obviously it'll be annoying them because they've got a fortnight to chew on the Tannadice performance before they can play again. But it'll be interesting to see what he changes, because that performance, especially in the midst of a title race, was unacceptable.
Speeds there in the comments predicts that Celtic will react. He says this is definitely not over. As you can see on your screen now, the league table. Look, I'd agree with the comment from Speeds there, Scott, that it's not over. But I think Celtic now, are really by the skin of their teeth. I agree with you. Any slip up at Dens Park, I think it's over. And above and beyond that, I would be stunned if the Celtic team won 7 games in a row.
They're up against it. There's no doubt about that. The only thing I'd say is, I think I said to Andy the other day, I suppose the thing they've got in their favour is that we pretty much know they'll have Hearts and Rangers post-split at Celtic Park. And there's no doubt that's a huge advantage. So if they can hang in there and give themselves a chance, you know what the atmosphere can be like, Daniel. No, when the fans get it together there and it's a massive game and there's so much at stake, no, it can be tough for teams going there if the atmosphere's right. So I think if you're a Celtic fan, you're going to be clinging on to that hope that we're still in it. No, we've got to play Hearts and Rangers at home, which I think is going to be crucial. That's why I says to Andy the other day in terms of favourites for the league, I definitely think Rangers are in with a shout, but I think Hearts have to be favourites, not just because they're top, but because Rangers post-split are going to need to go to Tynecastle and Celtic Park. I think that's going to be really difficult. No, tough games. But as I say, Celtic, no, they've got that advantage if they can stay in there. But as you say, any slip up at all at Dens Park, then that'll be curtains. And I think psychologically as well, that was the worry at Tannadice. You touched on it. It looked as if certain players had kind of almost given up on it. They were walking off Tannadice thinking, well, that's it. Do you know what I mean? And I think when you lose that, it can be hard to get it back in a run when there's so few games left.
You mentioned earlier on the kind of fantasy fixture of Hibs and perhaps handing the title to Hearts. I've got this weird feeling that in the last game it's going to be Celtic against Hearts at Parkhead, and Celtic, if they beat Hearts, can hand Rangers the title. Well, I know that's just purely fantasy based on nothing, but I could see something like that.
And that's a problem for SPFL chiefs when it comes to putting the fixtures together to try and avoid that kind of scenario. I mean, our good pal Jacko said well over a month ago on here, I don't know if you remember, I think he'd get a wee bit of intel, or he was claiming a wee bit of inside info, and he thought the SPFL's plan was to have Celtic Hearts last game of the season at Parkhead, so that wouldn't surprise me. But who knows how the table's going to look at that point, or what it might mean. But as you say, I mean, if that's the case, Celtic beat Hearts at home to hand Rangers the title. It's just that would just about top this season off.
Aye, absolutely. And I think that's the perfect note for us to end Wednesday night's Hotline Live, brought to you by NordVPN. Thank you for all the comments. They've been brilliant as ever. Thank you to the fantastic Tam McManus, the wonderful Andy Newport, and of course the one and only Scott McDermott. Scott, it's always an absolute pleasure.
No bother, Daniel. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.